Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. Today's video features the latest Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit and add-ons. I've got 5 cards to share with you today, so I'll share the new products that I used in those cards along the way. So let's jump right into the card making, starting with the main kit. The main kit this month has an amazing word die and a shadow die, a flower die and flowers and leaves. It's also got this sentiment set that has really everybody included on there. There's a cling background stamp and 3 layering stencils that you can use to color in the stamped image from that background stamp. And you know how much I love layering stencils. They make it so easy to color in a really detailed image pretty quickly. And when you use the small brushes like the one that's included in the main kit, you can color just parts of those stencils. So first I'm going to stamp the background stamp. So I'm going to take out my Misty mouse pad. I'm working in my original Misty because the background stamp is 6x6, and I'm working on a 5.5 by 5.5 piece of white cardstock. I'm going to treat the paper with anti-static powder tool and then stamp the cling stamp with Versamark ink. I'm going to use my Debby tool because it evenly applies pressure all over that stamp. I like the handle that's included that really allows me to easily put extra pressure on that Misty door. Then I'm going to use the Hero Arts brass embossing powder. I absolutely love both the brass and the gold from Hero Arts. They're really beautiful, and I really love how this image comes out when it's heat embossed with either gold or brass. So I'm going to heat set this to melt all that embossing powder. Yes, it does take a little bit of time. You can see the image has beautiful flowers, bees, leaves. So I'm going to line up the leaf stencil first. I don't know why I chose this one first. It was the easiest for me to figure out which direction it went on that stamped image. And then I'm going to tape everything down on the back to the stencil and then tape the front to my glass mat. I'm using Distress Oxide ink, and I didn't have the little brush that they put in the main kit, so I'm just using my waffle flower shader brushes to fill in all of the leaves, which is this stencil that I'm working on first has all of the greenery, so I was able to just cover it all up with cracked pistachio Distress Oxide ink. And for those of you who've seen my videos lately, you know how much I love the new Distress Oxide color. It's called Saltwater Taffy, and I'm going to color in the large flowers with the Saltwater Taffy. So I'm just going in and blending on that color pretty heavy for these flowers because I want the color to really stand out. If you do cover up some of your embossing, you can just wipe away that ink with a dry cloth. So I'm going to first just cover everything, and then I'll worry about whether or not I got ink on that beautiful embossing background there. I'm going to use a little bit of Kitsch Flamingo for the other flowers. For the tiny flowers, I'm using Salvage Patina, and all these colors are working really, really well together. And of course, it's so easy to color in this image because it's a layering stencil. So I could absolutely color in the image with markers or pencils or anything else, but I love these layering stencils, and it allows you to use lots of colors of ink. If you don't have lots of colors of ink, but you do have lots of markers, then go that direction. Okay, so here is the image fully covered in with that last layer that gave the details on the flowers and some details on even the tiny little flowers. So it's just completely colored in, and I cut it down to 4 by 5.25 so that I could mat it on some white cardstock because I really like the look of that white edge. Then I cut out the amazing shadow also in white cardstock, and then I cut out the amazing word die in gold cardstock that is backed with some easy cut iCraft adhesive thin layer sheets. And then I'm just going to use the little stamp set so that I have a little sub-sentiment as well. Actually, it's kind of a pre-sentiment. So it says just a little note to say you are, and then I'm going to pop up the amazing on some foam tape right in the center there. I love, you can see the difference between the brass in the background and the gold of that foil amazing. Just so much fun and so easy to put this card together, but it looks like it took a ton of work, right? Because of all the colors and the detail and stuff like that. So I just really love these layering stencils from Hero Arts. The next that I'm going to use is the Mother's Day Vase bundle, which includes dies for all the images, and there are a ton of sweet sentiments on there. I'm so lucky you're my mama. Thank you for helping me grow, things like that. So I'm going to stamp the largest bouquet with the vase. And again, this time I'm stamping with Copic Safe or alcohol friendly safe ink on top of Heffy Doodle paper, and I'm using my Arteza markers to color in all of the flowers in the vase. For the vase, I'm going to start with my light blue color and start from the sides and go towards the center and leave a white spot in the center. Then I'm going to take my darker color. I'm just using 2 colors here, and I'm going to put a little bit on both sides as well, but not going as far as the light blue went. Then I'm going to go back to the light blue and scrub out the dark line. That's what I like to call it, scrubbing it out, because you don't want to see a harsh line. And so really what you're doing is taking that light marker and just scrubbing over the harsh line and blending it out. So for me, the idea of kind of just scrubbing it makes it sound a lot easier than trying to blend and shade and all of that. And you can see then my light source would be straight from the front facing the vase. So the lightest part of the vase will be right in the center. And this is a really easy way to do light sources, I think, because if you have to remember, okay, the light's coming from the right, so it's always going to be the lightest on that side and that kind of thing, I think it's just easiest to have the light source go towards the center. It just makes it easier. And then you do the same exact type of blending and shading on both sides. And once that's done, I'm going to do some really basic coloring, again, just using 1 or 2 colors for all the flowers. For that large flower, I colored it in a yellow color and then put the center and the accents of it in an orange and just blended out those harsh lines. For those pinks, I did no blending and shading at all. I just colored the light pink in. Same for the dark pink. Let's see, same for the blue, honestly. Most of these smaller flowers, I just colored them in the bright colors that Arteza set comes in, which I really like. And then to add some interest, since I didn't add tons of blending and shading on those flowers, I am adding little dots or lines with my favorite white gel pen. Once that was done, I stamped Happy Mother's Day from the same stamp set on an piece of white cardstock that was cut down to 4 by 5 1/4 so I could mat it on some blue cardstock, and then popped up the vase and the floral arrangement on a piece of foam tape. Really simple. You could color in that little Mother's Day, Happy Mother's Day, but I liked it black and white just like it was. Very clean and simple, but fun and bright. For this next card, I'm going to use a Happy Mother's Day sentiment from a set that we're going to use later in the video. I just wanted to show you real quickly where I got that from. I'm going to treat some pink cardstock with some anti-static powder and stamp that Happy Mother's Day with Versamark ink. And again, I am going to cover that up this time, I think, with the gold embossing powder from Hero Arts. I am super hooked on the pink and gold color combination right now, so you see it in a lot of my cards lately. I'm going to heat set that to melt that embossing powder, and then I am ready to move on to the rest of the card, which means I'm going to add some tape runner and I'm going to lay it down on top of a white A2 piece of cardstock that I cut a square out of, but I'm going to lay this on a card base anyway, so it doesn't matter. Next, I'm going to use the Looking Glass Swan Family dies, and I'm just using tape runner behind these because there are only 3 of them and they're not so tiny that I can't fit my tape runner behind it, and it's easier that way, and then I don't have to worry about waiting for it to dry. So the background are the reeds, then you have the little baby, and then on top you have the mama, which is the swan. So I'm going to add a little eye for her, and then I'm going to add a little beak with some marker as well. And those 2 little details I think are all you need. She's so pretty on her own. You don't really need to add a lot. Although I have seen people use the spotlight dies where they completely do very detailed coloring. I think this just works perfectly as is and is super simple and doesn't take a ton of work either. Okay, next card is the Floral Mandala bundle, which includes a 4x6 stamp set and dies that cut out all of those mandalas. I'm not going to use the dies this time. I'm going to stamp a background of these mandalas. So I'm going to start with the large, the medium, and the small on one side of an A2 piece of white cardstock. I'm going to stamp it in Versamark ink and add my gold embossing powder, of course, and then heat set that. Once that is fully heat set, I'm going to put it back in my MISTI and start working on more of the other side. So I don't like to do all my stamping at once because you can't really see that clear embossing. So I like to heat set them, make sure it is set and it's not going to smear, and then start to add more stamping. So you can see I do this several times to complete the background and to make sure all my basic larger spots are filled in. There is a little flower as well, so I added that in a white spot that I had where I couldn't fit one of these larger mandalas. Now I'm going to take some Distress Oxide in Sponge Sugar, and this time I'm using one of the domed foam blenders because I'm going to do a large area, so I like to ink blend with them because they give you a nice, smooth, even blend. So I'm starting with Sponge Sugar at the very bottom of this A2 background here, and again, if you do cover up some of your embossing, that's okay. You can just wipe that extra ink away with a dry cloth. Next, I'm moving on to the Saltwater Taffy. Of course, it is my favorite new color, and I believe it blends beautifully with Sponge Sugar and Abandoned Coral. I'm going to use the Hero Arts Mister and just mist a little water on there because those Distress Oxides look really beautiful when you get a little water on there. I also have some Hero Arts liquid watercolor, so I put a little bit down on the glass mat, added a tiny touch of water to loosen it up, and then grabbed just a round brush and got some watercolor on there, and I'm just tapping at that brush to get some additional splatters. So you'll see when I lift it up the difference between the splatters of the watercolor and the mist from the water itself. And I like having both sometimes on a card like this that's so unique with the gold embossing and the mandala. I think that both splatters look really, really fun, even though they're both white technically. One's kind of a different look entirely. Okay, now I'm going to stamp the sentiment from the stamp set that says thankful for you, and I stamped it in Versamark ink once again, added some gold embossing powder on top, and I'm just going to trim it into a sentiment strip. So I did do this on a pink cardstock that I thought would kind of look nice with the blend, the triple blend that we created on this panel. I did trim the panel down to 4 by 5 1/4 so I can mat it on some A2 white cardstock once again because I do like that border around it. And I think this card was so much fun to make. I love those mandalas. I love them in gold with the pink ink blending on top. Soon after Mother's Day is Father's Day, so in the Mothers and Fathers Animals bundle, there are some Mother's Day messages and Father's Day messages, so I thought I would make this a Father's Day card. So I'm going to use the bears from that set, and this time I'm going to use some Copic markers. I like to switch it up. I go back and forth between the Artezas, the Copics, the Artix markers, just the sketch markers, whatever I feel like grabbing at that moment, or whatever I have more colors of in the color family that I'm working in. I happen to have a ton of browns for Copics, so I thought it would be easier to create the baby and the Papa Bear in this card with Copics. So I'm, again, not doing a ton of blending and shading. The baby bear is going to be a lighter blend, and then the Papa Bear is going to be that darker brown. And I just kind of kept going over it, except for areas where I felt like there were going to be lighter spots, like the paws and the face, to make sure that the face stands out. And I did use the dies to cut it out. This is the Happy Father's Day fancy dies. You have the letters and then the shadow. You can see I cut them out of this Hero Arts Navy cardstock, and now I'm going to use this Hero Arts Navy cardstock as the base of my card. So I cut this gray cardstock down to 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to do that horizontal card. If you didn't see my last video, I talked a lot about orientation between vertical and horizontal cards. I was struggling to fit what I wanted to fit on this card. So that's another way that you can choose between the two. When I stacked them on top of each other, I felt like it was going to either be top heavy or bottom heavy. Also, I felt like something was going to get lost, that something wasn't going to get seen as much. So I did stamp "Thank you for having my back, Papa Bear," there, and I'm white heat embossing that in the upper right hand corner. So what I'm going to do is something that I don't normally do, but I'm going to put the sentiment on the left hand side. The main sentiment is going to be one image on the left hand side, and then the bears are going to sit kind of right under that. So I'm going to put that on with tape runner. I have the Happy Father's Day with foam tape popped up, and this way everything gets seen and nothing gets lost in the shuffle there. I did just want to quickly show you this cling stamp that I'll be using on Saturday's live. This was also in the add-ons, and then this Happy Mother's Day window die. So those two will be featured in Saturday's live. If you haven't seen last month's unique Hero Arts main kit and add-ons, you can check out that video here. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can be notified every time I have a new video available. As always, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. The cooing just started. So I think I just did it right in time. Other than the gaming teenager, I think we got it just in time before afternoon cooing session. Now, of course they stopped because they're embarrassed because I'm calling them out. But, you know, pigeons, teenagers, it's all the same.